Hi, the SI meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, December 7th. Well, quite an interesting storm headed our way. It's a moisture-laden, potent storm for the next 24 hours or so, and we're now very mild here in the Mid-Atlantic region, the upper 50s to near 60 degrees in most spots. And who would believe that by tomorrow morning at this time there may be some snow on the ground, much closer to freezing. But then again, who would believe that we'd have over 60 inches of rain now officially here in Philadelphia for the year as of last night's rainfall. In fact, we have passed the 60-inch mark, which is the modern era record. The all-time record, the unofficial record, is from the late 1860s of over 61 inches. That is in jeopardy from this particular storm, as we may get more than 2 inches of rain before the ultimate changeover to snow late tonight. Let's take a look at the latest surface map. First of all, we've been talking about this very slow-moving cold frontal system that has now finally reached the southeastern part of Pennsylvania. It extends all the way from Maine down to the Gulf Coast. It's now dropped down to 35 degrees in northwestern PA, Bradford, Pennsylvania region. This colder air is slowly moving in from the northwest to the southeast. It's developing low now over the southwestern part of North Carolina. We'll take a track, and we'll talk about this in a moment with the computer forecast models. It'll take a track into south central Virginia and then off the Mid-Atlantic coast and off the New England coast, and enough colder air will wrap in on the northwest side of this low to change the rain to snow in most locations. I believe we'll have about 1 to 3 inches of snow by tomorrow morning in the northern and western suburbs of D.C., Philadelphia, and even New York City. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean in the areas like Chantilly, Virginia to Laurel, Maryland, for example, can get 1 to 3 inches late tonight. In the Philadelphia region, Chester County, Bucks County, Montgomery County, all could get up to 1 to 3 inches. And in the big cities themselves of Washington, Philly, and New York, probably an inch or less, but again, just to the northwest of these big cities from Washington to New York, 1 to 3 inches is possible later on tonight. Here's the latest radar loop, and just a band of soaking rain extends all the way from eastern part of New England down across West Virginia and into the Tennessee Valley. Heavy rain is breaking out already across Washington, Philadelphia, and New York City region, and we'll have periods of rain all day today and all evening, and some of that rain will be heavy, and there is even a chance of a couple of thunderstorms to mix in later on today and this evening. And again, we could get up to 2 inches or so of rain out of this before any changeover to snow late tonight, as this is a very moisture-laden, powerful storm with a tremendous upper-level support system here that we'll talk about in a moment. Well, let's walk through the latest GFS model. This is from 00Z last night, and it will first focus in on the surface from early this evening to just after midnight, and then we'll look at the upper-level low from early this evening to later on tonight, because in many ways that upper-level low is the key to this whole forecast in terms of the changeover to snow. Well, the GFS model has the low by early this evening, around 7 o'clock or so, in south central Virginia. Colder air has yet to make much advance across Pennsylvania. If we yesterday we talked about these thickness lines. Well, here's perhaps the rain-snow line early this evening, still to the west of the big cities. In fact, still into west central Pennsylvania. Now, there's a couple different ways you can get colder air to wrap into a system like this. One is just to advect the colder air in from the northwest to the southeast, for example, from northwestern Pennsylvania into southeastern Pennsylvania. And the second way is to get some dynamic cooling from the upper part of the atmosphere associated with a strong upper level low. And in fact, I think both processes are going to take place with this particular system and will play a role in the changeover to snow. Well, here's a GFS map for just after midnight. So the storm moves quickly from south central Virginia to just off the eastern New England coast in that 6-hour period. Now, notice the blue line here representing perhaps the advance of the rain-snow line here has again a bulge right around southeastern Pennsylvania across the D.C. region as the upper level low moves overhead, as well as some advection at the lower levels from the northwest colder air into the southeastern part of Pennsylvania, for example. This is the area where snow could break out late tonight after midnight and fall for a few hours, accumulating 1 to 3 inches, especially just to the north and west of the big cities. Now, in some cases, this particular track of a storm in some wintertime scenarios would be an all-out major snowstorm as it goes from southeastern Virginia to off the coast here. But of course, in this case, we just had no cold air ahead of this system, and the only chance of a changeover is again through a couple different processes: cooling from aloft and advection with colder air from the northwest or the southeast. Both processes will play a role in this particular storm. But of course, not an all-out major snowstorm because of the very mild air on the front end of this storm. Well, let's now focus in on the upper part of the atmosphere for this particular storm, because there is a very healthy, a very vigorous upper level low associated with this particular developing storm here. This is the GFS 500 millibar map for early this evening around 7 p.m. This is about the middle part of the atmosphere, and it dictates what goes on at the surface. This is a very impressive low. Basically what this is a cold pool of air in the upper part of the atmosphere, and the track of this upper level feature, which as we'll see in a moment, it goes in this particular direction towards the DC region and then even across southeastern Pennsylvania, may very well play the key role in the timing of the changeover to snow. And this is so vigorous that thunderstorms could break out later on this afternoon and this evening with this cooling in the upper part of the atmosphere. So again, I mentioned a couple of minutes ago the two processes to get cold air in to change the rain to snow. One is the advection, and this second method is kind of a top-down approach where colder air in the upper part of the atmosphere can actually feed in the lower part of the atmosphere and change the rain over to snow. And where this particular upper level feature goes is exactly where that dynamic cooling can occur, and you could have a change over to snow. So in this particular case, they have just as much chance of a change over to snow across DC and southeastern Pennsylvania as up to places north and east. In fact, maybe even a little better of a chance because of this cold pool in the upper atmosphere. And here's the upper air map 6 hours later, just after midnight from the GFS. So again, it takes a track right across the DC region and right across Philadelphia. And this may be the most interesting area to watch later on this afternoon and tonight, as that dynamics in the upper atmosphere plays a role. So we have a very interesting situation. Heavy rain, perhaps up to 2 inches or so by later on this evening. Then a change over to snow north and west of the big cities with up to 1 to 3 inches in the northern and western suburbs after midnight and before tomorrow morning's rush hour. And we'll monitor the situation over the next several hours, as this is a quite a perhaps rapidly changing situation. We'll try to track that rain snow line as it advances from the northwest to the southeast. That's it for now. I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.